Apokalipsa, rozdział 17. I zaniósł mnie w stanie zachwycenia na pustynię. I ujrzałem niewiastę siedzącą na bestii szkarłatnej, pełnej imion bluźnierczych, mającej 7 głów i 10 rogów. A 10 rogów, które widziałeś. I bestia, ci nienawidzić będą nierządnicy i sprawią, że będzie spustoszona i naga. I będą jedli jej ciało, i spalą ją ogniem, bo Bóg natknął ich serca, aby wykonali Jego zamysł. I to jeden zamysł wykonali, i dali bestii królewską swą władzę, aż Boże słowa się spełnią.
Coraz więcej osób jest zdania, które można było mieć wcześniej, parę lat temu, że bardzo ważną przyczyną narastania bąbla spekulacyjnego na rynku nieruchomości była zbyt łatwa polityka pieniężna Fedu. Obniżenie zwłaszcza stóp procentowych do poziomu 1% w 2003 roku. Ja mogę powiedzieć, że wtedy jeszcze jako szef Banku Centralnego Polski uczestniczyłem w różnych debatach wewnętrznych. Raz na 3 miesiące spotykaliśmy się w Bazylei i byłem zdumiony. To zresztą miałem okazję powiedzieć. Tym i uzasadnieniem, że aby uniknąć deflacji, musimy obniżyć stopy procentowe. Miałem okazję wtedy powiedzieć, że ja uważam, że the story of deflation is inflated, bo na taki prosty rzut oka na dane przekonywał, że to jest niewłaściwa diagnoza. I rzeczywiście wtedy dla uniknięcia urojonego niebezpieczeństwa zwiększono realne niebezpieczeństwo. Jakie? Obniżając stopy procentowe, przyspieszono wzrost kredytu. No tak jak się przyspiesza wzrost pieniądza kredytowego, to on poszukuje lokat, kieruje się coraz bardziej ryzykownych, to się nazywa poszukiwanie search for yield. No i jest wiele badań, które rzeczywiście wiążą późniejsze zjawiska w sektorze finansowym z tą przyczyną. Inne przyczyny także mają charakter do pewnego stopnia nierynkowy, to znaczy niezwiązane z jakimś naturalnym działaniem rynku. Rzeczywiście była ogromna presja polityczna w Stanach Zjednoczonych na udzielanie kredytu mieszkaniowego osobom, których poziom dochodu właściwie nie uzasadniał tego kredytu. To była swoista socjalistyczna doktryna w największym kapitalistycznym kraju świata. Każdy musi mieć.
Czy można interpretować te poważne zaburzenia jako kryzys kapitalizmu? No to trzeba by zacząć od takich podstawowych ustaleń. No co to jest ten kapitalizm? Przypominam, że kapitalizm to jest ustrój, który jest oparty na rynku, który bywa ograniczany, ale jednak dominuje w gospodarce i na własności prywatnej. Moim zdaniem nic takiego, co się do tej pory zdarzyło, nie zakwestionowało tego, a w każdym razie na pewno nie dostarczyło informacji, z której by wynikało, że alternatywna gospodarka, czyli socjalistyczna, jest lepsza. Warto jednakże pamiętać, tak jak już powiedziałem, ten kryzys się skończy.
Po obejrzeniu wywiadów profesora Balcerowicza oraz jemu podobnych ekspertów, można by sobie zadać logicznie pytanie, czy USA i Zachód zapomniał o kapitalistycznej logice, czy nagle zapomniał, jak generować zyski i zabezpieczać się przed stratami. Odpowiedź jest: Zachód nie zapomniał, bo Zachód zawsze działał według utartego starego schematu. Tym razem jednakże ktoś przechytrzył Zachód. Celem firmy prywatnej, czyli kapitalistycznej, jest maksymalizacja zysku poprzez wzrost sprzedaży lub spadek kosztów. Zwiększenie sprzedaży w warunkach kapitalistycznych przeważnie nie jest możliwe ze względu na silną konkurencję. Łatwiej jest natomiast zawsze uciąć koszty, na przykład zatrudnienie i temu podobne. Znaczna większość ekspertów ekonomicznych omawiało skutki, efekty, jakie kryzys wywołał. Skupili się na omawianiu środka problemu, a nie na realnych przyczynach kryzysu. Czyżby nie czytali i nie oglądali mediów? Czytali i oglądali, ale są kiepskimi ekspertami, bo nie potrafią logicznie zestawiać faktów.
Well, let me ask you, what was the end goal of Osama bin Laden? It's easy to say he wanted to destroy the United States, but that wasn't it. It was destroy the Western way of life and collapse us. Back in the late 1990s, when I was warning New Yorkers that there would be blood and bodies and buildings in the streets, I said within 30 years, little did I know it would be within 5. I warned people about Osama bin Laden because I actually read his words. And he talks about doing to America what he did to the Soviet Union. Osama bin Laden believed that he collapsed the Soviet Union. But really what it was spending too much, a war that was dragging on forever in Afghanistan, see if this sounds familiar at all, unrest within the population of the Soviet Union, and international pressure. What made them collapse in the end was financial disaster. That's why bin Laden learned from that and chose the World Trade Center. It was the symbol of the American economy. We felt like it was a symbol because we never think that the United States could financially collapse, but he does. He actually believed that they could destroy the American economy with a massive hit, and they almost did it. A hit that large a second time might do it, might not. Now in this report, it says pretty much it would take a sovereign fund or a sovereign nation to be able to pull that off. So that makes things a little more complex. But with that in mind, here's how the 3-phase attack works that you should know about. Phase 1, you use oil as a weapon to raise capital. Now what does that mean? In the report, he talks about the deliberate inflation of oil prices by speculators from 2007 to mid-2008, which coincided with the housing financial crisis. Do you remember on television all of the talk about speculators at the time? Watch.
While a few reckless speculators are counting their paper profits, most Americans are coming up on the short end.
We must end the excessive speculation in the energy markets.
The current excess speculation and manipulation in the oil markets.
The price of oil is not being set by the needs at the corner gas station, but by the desires of a few excessive speculators.
Our concern is the speculator who's in the market, who will never take possession of oil, never wants to, but is really gaming the price.
But I do know this. As the price of crude oil went up, our financials went down.
Phase 1 was OPEC. This is a symbol for OPEC. And OPEC has, since 1970, said we're going to use our economic weapon against the United States. They've embargoed us. That was one of the reasons for the formation of OPEC. Now, not all OPEC nations are bad, but this represents the oil producers primarily in the Middle East. The Iranians, Saudi Arabia, others. OPEC has a necessary need for as high a price of oil as possible. In fact, if you're in Iran, they need $80 a barrel. And this is another study I did for the Pentagon. If they don't get $80 a barrel, their society doesn't work.
Right.
This represents the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. They did a study, and I contend that there was speculation in the market that drove the price of oil from $50 a barrel in January 2007 to $150 a barrel by June 2008. That's a tripling in price without any supply disruption. Historically, if they want to raise prices, they disrupt supplies. The new way is you saber rattle, threaten to close the Straits of Hormuz, and people get scared and they bid up the price of oil. I contend they also use the financial markets, that they threw money, excess, that $1 trillion went in from the Western economies to the Middle East when the price triples from 50, they make $1 trillion more.
We're paying for our own destruction. We're financing our own destruction.
We're paying. Jim Woolsey, the former CIA director, good friend, he says, this is the only war since the Civil War that we've paid for both sides.
Right.
So OPEC has an incentive to see high prices. How I suggest they did it is part of what they did is they used the commodity futures markets.
Okay.
And I'm not the only one who says this. George Soros has said it. The chairman emeritus of economics department at MIT.
Everybody was saying it's speculators.
Well, that's not true. The hedge funds got in and begged, you know, they argued the same thing that you've shown repeatedly. They get in and argue, no, it's not speculation. Yes, it was speculation. Any way you slice it, you don't triple the price of oil
without an event.
Without an event, and having supply go up and demand go down.
Right.
It was speculation. And the CFTC said no speculation, and they said that in a report that came out in June 2008. Now, we changed the CFTC. We have Gary Gensler comes in, and he comes back and says, well, maybe there was some speculation, and later reports have indicated there might be speculation.
Okay.
This is the same group, by the way, that oversaw MF Global. So it's interesting.
Really interesting.
Yes.
What is ICE?
ICE is the Intercontinental Exchange. It is one of the dark markets I talk about in my book. And so when ICE is, when people are trading oil in ICE, you can't see it. You don't know who's behind it. It's a dark market.
Okay.
So it's non-transparent and it's hidden.
Okay. So, and this is something that I laid out at the time. I think I marked, I think I may have said $140 per barrel is our tipping point. When it was going up, I said, you hit a sustained 130, 140 per barrel, and you're going to see this economy come apart at the seams. And that's what happened. Phase one was get people to put all of their money into energy instead of being able to pay for their house. Then you start to deteriorate with Fannie and Freddie, and all the mortgages all go under, right?
Right. That sets up phase two perfectly.
Okay. How much time do we have here? Let's go to phase two.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Phase two, and when I say that bear raids took place in the market, it's not just me who's saying it. George Soros said it. His op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. I've got his book over there, What Happened to the Crash of 2008.
Oh, no.
A bear raid is essentially a run on the bank. And what they did was they panicked people regarding Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, and all of that. Fannie and Freddie, and we've got the Russian flag here, which is interesting. Fannie and Freddie were hurt because of phase one.
Okay.
People weren't able to pay their mortgages.
Correct.
Russia then dumps their Fannie and Freddie holdings on the market. They told the Chinese and told and they told Paulson. So that is a serious problem that they're attacking, and that's creating all this environment of panic. The Muslim Brotherhood, by the way, created Sharia-compliant finance. Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Brotherhood, in the 1930s, I believe, created Sharia-compliant finance and called it jihad with money. And what Sharia-compliant finance was able to do was, in October 2007, Wall Street Journal runs an article that says Islamic finance meets modern hedge funds. They were able to short sell using the techniques of George Soros because of this new ruling from the Sharia authorities.
Which is not a coincidence.
Is not at all a coincidence.
Something we've never talked about this on the air, but America, I looked in when I lived in New Canaan, Connecticut, and that's all Wall Street. 80% of that town, maybe 90% of the town is all Wall Street. And so I knew a lot of people on Wall Street when this thing happened, and I started looking into Sharia compliant trading and everything else. There's something very dark, very, very dark going on there, and it's all undercover. I mean, nobody is talking about it, nobody's investigating, nobody's even looking at it, and it's extraordinarily dangerous.
Well, and some of the Sharia experts that are able to rule what's compliant, what's non-compliant, they're jihadists. Their statements are absolute, we want jihad with money. One of them called it.
Okay, quickly let's run down the
Okay, well, I want to mention this is the PLA who wrote the book Unrestricted Warfare I showed you yesterday. They said a stock market crash using his techniques is the way to bring down America, and these guys have learned from that.
Got it.
Okay, NASDAQ was hacked. I mean, it was flat out hacked. And I was talking to the FBI about this, and I said, this is a national security risk. And of course, the FBI, well, we can't confirm or deny is what they would tell me. But I noticed 2 months later, the NSA was in looking at that. And if the NSA is looking at it publicly, it was said, if they're looking at it, it's probably an act of terrorism that's taking place. And we know Lehman Brothers was a target. George Soros said that Lehman Brothers was the linchpin, that when they fell with Bear Stearns from naked short selling, that was what triggered the collapse. Barclays is interesting because Barclays was picked to buy Lehman. And there's a whole long story that I get into the details in the book. I don't think we have time to get into it now. But they did not buy Lehman. They bought the Lehman assets out of bankruptcy. By the way, Barclays helped create with the Sharia authorities the Arbun transaction that allowed short selling. And
Holy
then
cow.
this was a target. They come in and buy them. Barclays at the time was heavily owned by 2 sovereign wealth funds out of the Middle East.
Holy cow.
Then they bought Lehman Brothers, they bought them out of bankruptcy for a fraction, and then they sued later because they bought them so cheap that 2 months later, in December 2008, Barclays had to write up the assets. Everybody else was writing everything down. Barclays was writing assets up in December 2008.
Okay. We have such a short period of time. Let's go to, we know about AIG. Anything, just hit highlights here on anything that you feel is like at Barclays.
AIG wrote the credit default swap insurance and almost went under, and if AIG had not paid out, Goldman Sachs would have gone under.
Okay.
So it almost...
All the evidence points to, in the 2008 economic crash, to one thing: jihad with money. Do you remember this clip? When it came out back in January of 2009, shortly after the 2008 collapse, everybody was talking about it for just a second. Watch again.
Here's the facts, and we don't even talk about these things. On Thursday at about 11 o'clock in the morning, the Federal Reserve noticed a tremendous drawdown of money market accounts in the United States to the tune of $550 billion was being drawn out in a matter of an hour or two. The Treasury opened up its window to help. They pumped $105 billion in the system and quickly realized that they could not stem the tide. We were having an electronic run on the banks. They decided to close the operation, close down the money accounts, and announce a guarantee of $250,000 per account so there wouldn't be further panic out there. And that's what actually happened. If they had not done that, their estimation was that by 2 o'clock that afternoon, $5.5 trillion would have been drawn out of the money market system of the United States, would have collapsed the entire economy of the United States, and within 24 hours, the world economy would have collapsed. It would have been the end of our economic system and our political system as we know it.
He's behind you! Don't go in there! It's a scary movie, isn't it? It should send a chill down your spine. Boo! But it doesn't, because nobody's really looking into it, you know? Global economy was nearly brought down in less than 1 day. Want the facts? Right here. Right here. America's collapsed in a few hours. On September 15th, the market was in decline, but it was kind of gradual. Dow down to around 11,000. Certainly nothing to cause panic about. No, no, shouldn't have done that. And then you had that electronic run on the bank, the size of which could have destroyed the entire global economy. And then it got bad. Yeah. About $50 trillion in global wealth. Let me say it again. $50 trillion in global wealth gone. An anonymous review of NASDAQ, which was examined by several law enforcement agencies, was titled "Red Flags of the Market Manipulation Causing a Collapse of the U.S. Economy." Featured page after page after page after page of trading reports strongly indicating acts of financial terrorism taking place, revealing that 2 mysterious companies suddenly traded in volumes so large that they were the largest traders overnight, and they worked in concert with each other. They worked in concert with each other? 2 companies working together. Boom. Buy, sell, buy, sell. Or is it sell and buy? 2 of them. Now, who is on the other end of the phone? 2 of them talking to each other. Who are they? Well, we have a short list of suspects: Middle Eastern states, Islamic terrorists, hostile members of the Chinese military, government and organized crime groups in Russia, Venezuela, Iran, China, Osama bin Laden. He talks about his main target, the U.S. economy, if I may quote, "If their economy is destroyed, they will be so busy with their own affairs rather than enslaving the weak peoples. It is very important to concentrate on hitting the U.S. economy through all possible means." End quote. He bragged that he and his terror group knew of all of the cracks in the American economy, and they were made up of, quote, modern educated youth who are aware of the cracks inside the Western financial system, as they are aware of the lines in their hands, end quote. And although this classified report indicates when the CIA searched bin Laden's materials from his compound, they found a strategy to take down the economy of Europe. Then we have the Chinese book from 1999. It's right there. Well, yeah, see, next one. You read it? Read this one, and it will tell you about this one. Unrestricted Warfare, written by 2 members of China's PLA, the People's Liberation Army. They say the Chinese military strategy is to take down America, not through direct military action, that's too tough, but through economic terrorism, specifically talking about crashing the U.S. market and the U.S. economy. They explained to achieve such economic destruction, it won't require an entire country, just a few soldiers of tomorrow, like bin Laden, or even better, Mr. George Soros. He's kind of more a soldier of not tomorrow or even today or yesterday, more like about 900 years ago. Soros has notoriously been active and even credited for the bringing down of several entire economies. And number 1 target on his hit parade now appears to be America. Not my words, his. Quote, the main obstacle to a stable and just world order is the United States, end quote. So he sees us as an obstacle and an enemy. Now that's not insignificant from Mr. Soros. There's a reason the Prime Minister of Malaysia calls Soros, quote, an unscrupulous profiteer. People in London know him as the man who broke the Bank of England. These aren't empty threats from Mr. George Soros. If he finds a regime to be oppressive, hurting people, he works to destroy it. He is why he is called an economic terrorist. Watch.
When you try to, let's say, improve society, you affect different people and different interests differently, and they are not actually commensurate. So you very often have all kinds of unintended adverse consequences. So I had to experiment, and it was a learning process. The first part was this subversive activity, disrupting repressive regimes. That was a lot of fun, and that's actually what got me hooked on this whole enterprise.
Yeah, what got him hooked on this whole enterprise. We're just doing little experiments, what? And so in 2008, you had all of these players doing their part, and they nearly collapsed the global economy. They've had 4 years to work on this. It takes a while to collapse the United States economy. In May of 2010, the Dow dropped 900 points in 6 minutes. No explanation. We're living in a country now where the media is completely disengaged from the facts. And there is a very strong chance that foreigners have control of our markets. And nobody is even looking. They're waiting for the right time. And it's coming.
Phase 3 is, I believe...
This is where we are now.
This is where we are now. When this man was killed by SEAL Team 6, they found a document in his possession that was a strategy for destroying the economies of Europe. And it describes some of Phase 2, but Phase 3 wanting to ruin the sovereign credit of Greece, Italy, when just 2 years ago...
Specifically those countries?
No, I don't know. I haven't seen the document.
Okay.
It's all classified. I've
right.
only read the German press reports. But I know the Germans came out and banned naked short selling and naked credit default swaps.
Because of that?
I don't know, but
Okay.
the timeline fits. I also know that the Germans' spy agencies have reported financial terrorism activities. And it's not been picked up in the United States.
It only makes sense. That's why they hit the World Trade Center. They were going after our symbol of power, our symbol of wealth, and they really thought that they could collapse the economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the BRIC nations have seen the sovereign credit of the United States and seen the status of the dollar and the downgrade, and Brazil, Russia, India, and China have begun to trade in their own currency. If we lose the reserve status of the dollar, our interest rates will spike. It's game over. We can do that over 10 years.
Yeah.
If we do it over 10 days, we're finished.
Okay. We need to revisit the three phases of the economic attack because we are in phase 3. 1, driving up oil prices rapidly. 2, the 2008 crash. 3, destroying the currency and sovereign debt.
Habakuk 2. Zaiste. Bogactwo oszukuje, a człowiek pyszny nie zazna spokoju, traci rozsądek i spokój gardziel szeroko, rozwiera jak szeol i jak śmierć nigdy nie jest nasycony. Choć zebrał ludy wszystkie wokół siebie, wszystkie narody przy sobie połączył. Biada temu, co mienie cudze zabiera i obciąża się zastawem zbyt wielkim. Czyż nie powstaną nagle wierzyciele? Twoi i nie obudzą się twoi dręczyciele, a ty się staniesz ich łupem. Ponieważ złupiłeś liczne narody. Złupią i ciebie pozostałe ludy, biada ciągnącemu dla domu swego zysk nieprawy. Aby zbudować wysoko swe gniazdo i tym sposobem uniknąć nieszczęścia. Jak widzimy, Biblia, czyli Słowo Boga i fakty nie kłamią. Pan profesor Leszek Balcerowicz nie miał i nadal nie ma racji w swoich analizach. Kryzys wywołała bestia, czyli głównie kraje arabskie, czyli kraje islamu. Zbierając tryliony dolarów. Jako kapitał na spekulacjach w handlu ropą naftową. A wszystko po to, aby później zaatakować rynki finansowe. Nie jest przypadkiem, że bestia doprowadziła do kłopotów i upadku wiele żydowskich instytucji finansowych, w tym Lehman Brothers. Powodem kryzysu było to, że bestia wyssała 50 trylionów dolarów z gospodarek światowych. Wszystkie gospodarki światowe są dzisiaj połączone i zależne wobec 7 najbogatszych krajów świata, czyli USA, Kanady, Włoch, Wielkiej Brytanii, Francji, Niemiec i Japonii. Wyciągnięcie takiej ilości pieniędzy z gospodarek światowych, a przeważnie zachodnich, spowodowało ich skurczenie, czyli cięciem kosztów poprzez zwalnianie pracowników. Ci zwalniani pracownicy mieli kredyty mieszkaniowe i inne kredyty na sobie. Ponieważ zostali zwolnieni z pracy, nie mogli ich spłacać. Jak widać, można być profesorem od finansów i ekonomii i nie mieć zupełnie zielonego pojęcia, o czym się mówi. No ale jak się doprowadziło Polskę i Polaków do ruiny poprzez wyprzedaż majątku narodowego, ziemi oraz naszych zasobów, a z Polaków uczyniło niewolników oraz żebraków, tych, którym nas sprzedano. Ekonomia polska również podupadnie, bo nie mamy nic, co należy do nas. Wszystko sprzedaliśmy za radą profesora Balcerowicza i przy oklaskach ekonomistów z Zachodu. A uprzedni wzrost gospodarczy w Polsce utrzymywany był tucznie. Na przykład eksodusem bezrobotnych Polaków za granicą i słanymi przez nich do Polski zarobionymi pieniędzmi. Również eksport, szczególnie żywności, wzrósł, bo emigracja. Inwestorzy zagraniczni teraz obracają pieniędzmi zarobionymi z naszych zasobów i dzięki nam, inwestując te pieniądze u nas albo korumpując inne rządy i państwa, używając ich oraz naszego skorumpowanego prawa, demokracji, konstytucji, praw patentowych i autorskich oraz im podobnym. W tym systemie ekologia i ludzie są zawsze na szarym końcu, a zysk bezdusznych i bez serca prywaciarzy pierwszy.